All right. Hey, just to make a long story longer, let's dive into the flip here. And again, the flip is where we argue not necessarily what we think, but we take two sides of an argument. So here is what we are debating. Trump is winning the tariff war. So let's do that flip of the coin here. All
Did
right,
I, did I
Dan,
win? Did I win the flip?
you did. So you need to argue that Trump is winning the tariff war.
All right. Trump is the ultimate negotiator. This is 4D chess that he is playing. Textbook art of the deal. It's always about starting with a monster ask. It's never about precision. This isn't acute. He's not doing a small surgery and improving and clearing the arteries. He's clearing the world from what has been bad policy for multiple decades that has set the United States behind. We just talked about how we can't manufacture iPhones. And it's not about bringing people back to screw in iPhones. It's about building the next generation of the most advanced factories based on robotics that are going to be able to make the things that we need here in the United States. So he was not ever planning to get all these tariffs in place. It was a big chess move, 4D chess move to get there. So the big ask now has come down to be a smaller ask because after some consideration and watching some of the variables at stake, he finally came out and said what he was really after. And he's after two things. And he's already winning. The first is getting China on the defense. And China can posture. All these countries can make posture, but they depend on our consumers. China will get hurt worse than we will. They have population issues. They've built trillions of dollars of factories to be able to flood the world with goods. And there's nowhere in the world you can flood with goods the way you can flood the United States. We have the consumers. We have the spending capability here. The cards are in his favor, as he would like to say. He's also all about making the Fed move. And what we've done through all this tariff war is we've basically created a ton of uncertainty around the world because our economies and our financial systems are all interconnected. We've got the massive carry trade in Japan that's causing interest rates to move all over the map. We're seeing inflation tumble to lows, and yet the Fed is playing politics and not lowering its rate. Let's be very clear. Trump is putting Fed Chair Jerome Powell into the corner, and he is in the corner no matter what he says. First, and then next off, the United States has an incredibly monster debt problem right now. More bad policy has put us in a position where we are now $37 trillion in debt, and we are running a $2 trillion annual deficit. This is unsustainable. It's a much bigger problem than we want to admit. We've got almost $10 trillion coming due to refinance this year. And yes, the 10-year might be moving around, but ultimately interest rates, when he wins with Powell, will come down. They'll be able to refinance that debt, and they will save tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars when we get those interest rates down. We're already seeing the work of Doge make a difference. The deficit in the last month went to a multi-year low. The spending cuts are starting to make a difference. And remember, he's got the support of Bessent, who's a very smart, very calculated, thoughtful leader of the Treasury. And he did the big short on the pound. He's doing a similar game here. He understands how the world works. He understands that what we need to do is bring the world to the table, make them our partner. And then what ends up happening is that China gets left in a corner, the Fed gets put in a corner, and that's the 4D chess game that he is playing. The last thing I will say is, look, we can have a long debate about cheap goods, but cheap goods is not what we are really arguing about here. This is about a broken relationship where we've outsourced all of our critical industry, our critical infrastructure development, and our IP. We have to bring IP back. We are getting squeezed by the world because we can't make our own semiconductors. If we can't make our own semiconductors here, we cannot lead the world in technology. If we cannot lead the world in technology, we cannot end up ultimately leading in AI because China can always go after Taiwan. And we are so dependent on Taiwan that all this interconnectedness basically means we don't have the IP we need. So we've outsourced our critical manufacturing. We've outsourced much of our energy needs. We've outsourced critical resources. And significant parts of our defense are now dependent on this as well. We have no choice but to bring it back. It's not about people screwing in iPhones. It's about building the next generation of innovative factories and making sure that we control our destiny. Trump is winning. Powell's in the corner. China, the move is yours.
Yeah. So, uh, Dan, I think you did a great job talking in theory of why these tariffs might be a good thing for the United States and the rest of the world. But what we're arguing here is that Trump is winning the trade war. So, you talked about Art of the Deal. That book was written when I was still in college, before I think 4D chess was
Can't
even
believe it was 50
discussed.
years ago.
It's been a long time, and since then, what has Trump done? Like, is he a magnet, like a financial guru? I mean, he sells cheap wine, he has hotels no one wants to stay in, and a guy that won't even show his taxes to reflect how much money his companies have lost. So, I mean, that is the art of the deal here. And you've got people who built real businesses like Elon Musk, who think these tariffs are completely ridiculous, and a lot of people that we respect that think this is ridiculous. And if and this is going to be the easiest one yet for me to win, and I win most of these. I mean, you're very articulate. You speak in complete sentences. I have some ums and some pauses, Dan, but that's just my thoughtful nature. So he hasn't won anything yet, right? There's not a single deal that has been done. But I could stop here, but I'll go on. So let's look at the policy U-turns. Okay, let me quote unquote. This is not a negotiating tactic. To we're open negotiations, quote unquote. To we're going to make iPhones in the U.S. Can you be more disconnected? I think we just argued the fact that there is no way that iPhones will ever be made in the US. So, talk about ivory tower disconnection from the common man or common person that got Trump into the White House, right? Uh, Next major point, he's alienating our allies that we have had for, in some cases, centuries, as it is related to like France. Europe is looking at adding tariffs on U.S. services like Azure and Google Cloud, which again we can debate whether that's fair, but that's the reflexive situation going on. Europe is already lowering barriers to Chinese EVs. You and I talked about that yesterday. Um, Europe and U.S. have to connect to create this blockade versus China, not to disincent them from doing this. I mean, Mexico and Canada, this is completely ridiculous. Who are the two countries? We've got Canada that stands between the US and Russia. Mexico should be our low cost manufacturing hub to compete with China. And oh, by the way, a geographic barrier to what China is doing throughout South America. Let's go to markets. All right, markets are imploding. Right, gosh, it had the huge run up once there was the 90-day, but what's happening is the calculus of what China impact is going to be is finally settling. And what about the bond market? Oh my gosh, interest rates for the 2, the 10, the 30 are all up. Okay. And what does that 30-year mean to people? It essentially means that you will be paying a higher interest rate than you were before. Did Trump run on lower interest rates and lower inflation? But hey, let's talk prices, right? So I think yesterday, right, inflation was pegged at 2.4% before the tariffs. And in the end, tariffs are really just a tax on consumers and businesses. So, economists have predicted the import taxes could add up to 3 percentage points to U.S. inflation next year. The NRF, National Retail Foundation, has a disproportionate impact on local communities and small retailers who operate on thin margins. Medicine, where do you think the core ingredients from all antibiotics come from? They come from China. How about farmers, right? Key American products like soybeans, right, are looking at 100+% tariffs in China, triple the peak rate in 2018. And what's happening, right? Brazilian soybean makers are edging in. and China is starting to buy from them. Oh, don't like Boeing? We'll buy Airbus. So the switching costs here could be immense. And my final point here, and again, this is the easiest one I've had to debate yet. As prices go up, people buy less, and we're in a recession. And whether you want to make fun of the IMF, right? They're warning that the escalation can cause essentially a collapse of the post World War II free trade order and fracture supply chains, weakening an already ailing world economy. So, Dan.
Hey, congratulations on reading the teleprompter from MSNBC, Pat. You did well.
No, I appreciate that. No, I did at least 5 minutes of research on this. So, but no, that was a good one, man. So again, caveat: we don't necessarily argue what we believe. My biggest fear, Dan, flip aside, is that if we go to war with China, there are things that we just can't do. Our side won World War II for manufacturing prowess, and so did pretty much World War I. And with our inability to create basic things, all the medicine that's done in China, it's like, I think we need to put ourselves in a position to be able to do those things. And I do believe we have been taken advantage of, and we took our eye off the ball.
That was your best argument for me so far. I want to thank everybody out there that Pat's close was also basically a vote for the fact that
I said it wasn't the flip. If you weren't
we're done. But
you weren't doing your email.
A real debater doesndoesn't stop debating just because some sort of clock. I mean, we got to go after it. This is like a marriage, man. This war is not over yet. You want to make sure that we keep ourselves vulnerable. Let's make sure that we can't make any of the stuff we need. And we've pretty much done that. So good on us. Mission accomplished. Where's George W. when we need him?
Exactly. Yeah, good old NAFTA man.